Shmuel, who opened up the Beit HaKnesset for us. Rabbi Moshe is not here tonight. But we always say something in honor of the host. So even though Rabbi Moshe Ben Zaken is not here, I'll say in his honor that he normally asks me to refrain from bashing people. But he's not here tonight. So what he doesn't know can't hurt him. As I was driving... that's right. But I trust this. As I was driving around yesterday, I already printed the source sheets for the shiur. And I already emailed them to you, but a few new sources popped into my head, and I said, these ones, it's better they're not on the source sheet, but I wanted to read them to you anyways. Last time I was here, we discussed that knowledge is power. The more halakha that you know, the more Torah that you know, the more control you have over your life, and the less dependence you have on people who may not be telling you the whole truth. And this is an important thing that people need. You need independence. It's not that we don't want rabbis, chas v'shalom, to the contrary. But just like you go to a doctor and you want to make sure the doctor you're going to is someone you trust. So if you ask a question and they don't know the answer, then you start to get concerned. Maybe they didn't really pass medical school. The same thing with chachamim. Not all chachamim were created equally. And the only way that you could properly discern between who is it that I should go ask questions to and who is it that I should not is how much you know. My father raised me on a value that was there's no mitzvah to be stupid. There's not a mitzvah. There's 630 commandments, but one of them is not to be stupid. It's important to know, and that's the purpose of this shiurim from now until we finish learning together, B'ezrat Hashem, is I wish that every person here, regardless of how scary all that Hebrew on the source sheet looks like for you right now, it won't be that scary, because if you give it time, and you give it your effort and dedication, I guarantee you that you will be able to go back into these source sheets and to look things up and to know them for yourselves. So bear with the Hebrew, because the content is what's very important. That being said, I promised a little bit of a bashing. So I wanted to read to you from the writings of one of the great Chachamim of North Africa. They called him the Angel Raphael, Hamalach Raphael Berdugo. And he writes on the verse in Kehillat, which says, Al tihi tzadik harbe. Believe it or not, the Tanakh tells us, don't be too righteous. What does it mean, don't be too righteous? Al tihi tzadik harbe. What is the definition of too righteous? Says Rabbi Raphael Berdugo, Lo te'esor yoter mima she'asra haTorah. Do not prohibit anything more than that which the Torah has already prohibited. Ki dai b'chumot haTorah. It's enough already what we're not allowed to do according to the Torah. 630 commandments. You're looking to make more? We don't have already enough mitzvot we have to keep, the things we can do. Oma she'iskimu lehakat hachachamim hamusmachim lanu. It's an including in the things that we're obeying are not just the words of the Torah itself, but the words of the Chachamim, of the Talmud, and the Mishnah that have the ability to add mitzvot, and we also are taking on their commandments. Once you fulfill all the biblical commandments and the rabbinic commandments that were added, how many rabbinic commandments were added to the 613?
20,000.
It seems like it some days of the week. Really, there are only 7. There are 7 extra commandments about the Chachamim. V'chimdumeli, it appears to me, Rabbi Raphael Berdugo, shekol raboteinu ha'ashkenazim lo pirshu ha'pasuk hazeh. That it must be that our rabbis, our colleagues by the Ashkenazim, they never studied this pasuk that says, don't be too righteous. Shehirbu v'ifrizu al hamidah b'chumot, because they already exaggerated with the amount of stringencies that they added to what the Torah says and what the rabbi said. I'm going to tell you now already up front. The argument about whether or not you should add things to the Torah, it's not a Sephardic Ashkenazi thing. The Torah itself tells us, before it says, Al tihi tzadik harbe, don't be too righteous, the Torah itself says, you're not allowed to add to the Torah, nor take away from the Torah. And therefore, you see from here, there's no difference between someone who doesn't observe what is written in the Torah to somebody who observes more than what is written in the Torah. Both of those people are violating the same biblical prohibitions of deviating from what it is that the Creator of the universe told us. There's another Chacham, his name was Rabbi Moshe Chalfon HaKohen. He was a rabbi anyone know where he's from? Have you heard of him before? Rabbi Moshe Chalfon HaKohen. By the way, in Turkey, you can guess already from Kohen, he's going to be most of the time from Jerba. Very good. In Jerba, it's part of Tunisia. There's Tunis, there's Tunisia, one's a city, one's a country. Jerba is an island that's part of there. Almost all the Jews on that island were Kohanim. And very, very, very religious Kohanim. It was, in fact, perhaps from the most ghetto-like religious communities we ever had in the Sephardic community. Rabbi Moshe Chalfon Kohen was also one of the early Sephardic Zionists who actively promoted political Zionism in Jerba. Rabbi Moshe Chalfon Kohen writes that he's waiting for the Redeemer to come because he wants the Redeemer to settle the score. Who's right? The Sfaradim or the Ashkenazim? Who should be strict or not be strict? So he's waiting for that. That's what he writes in his own book. And with that note, I wish to start with today's sources. You probably have in front of you. There's an extra. Can I ask for my wife for an extra one? The first source is from my rabbi, Yaakov Peretz. In his book, Emet Yaakov, it's a manual for rabbis. I believe when Jonathan graduated, he didn't have this book out yet, but since then, he needed to tell us how to be rabbis because things are complicated. Kodem, he said, before I start, I'm in source 1 on page 1. If anyone needs pens or anything, notebooks over there, it says $1, $2, just take if you need something. I'd rather you write than not write it up. Kodem, before I begin, אביע כאן רגשות צער ומבוכה של תלמידי חכמים ישרים. I have to express my sorrow and my pain of a straightforward Torah scholar. התמהים על נתיבות ונכונות ולא טובות שמתהלכים בהם אנשי דורנו. He says, we are in awe, not in a positive way, we are bewildered by the path of which many people in this generation have chosen to follow. הם ריבוי הדעות והספקות והחששות. It's the numerous amounts of doubts and concerns and worries העוברות גבולות צדק היושר והאמת, which surpass any boundary of what is righteous and what is true. I mentioned last week that Albert Einstein said, you should be wary from anybody who has problems for every solution. Sometimes you have a conversation with somebody about halakha, about Shabbat. You say, well, it could be a problem of this, it could be a problem of that, it could be why do you have to have so many problems? You know, I was overhearing people having a conversation about swimming on Shabbat. I'm not going to discuss with you about swimming on Shabbat. That Shlomo will give a class about that another day. And they said, well, you know, maybe you're going to come to build a raft. You're going to come to build a raft. Anyone here know how to build a raft? Maybe the water that you're going to take out of the pool is going to drip on the weeds that are... You can have a real conversation about why yes or not to swim on Shabbat, but please, don't turn into some ridiculous conversation about it. Maybe you're going to come and build a raft. It has to be a normal conversation that you have when it comes to halakha. Oh, how can you trust the ingredients in the kosher product? Maybe they smeared the machine with pig fat. I already showed you last week that pig fat is okay. But let's pretend it's not. Why would you ever assume that people smear machinery with pig fat? Who does that? You want to have a conversation, have a conversation. But sometimes the conversations that people have, they surpass all the boundaries of what is normal, and what is sane, and what is truthful. And there are some who are even afraid לפסוק הלכה מתוך שולחן ערוך המקובל על כלל ישראל מדודו. And I'm going to give a class next week about Shulchan Aruch. So don't jump on me for this. These are people who are afraid to even rule Jewish law as it's explicitly mentioned in Shulchan Aruch, the code of Jewish law. But I'll tell you that one of the most controversial things that you can do as a Jew is to discuss with people what it actually says in the book of Jewish law. But what? That can't be that's Judaism. I get all the time. I say something, it's in Shulchan Aruch, it's black on white. No, it must be that you read it wrong. Or we don't follow Jewish law. I know you don't follow Jewish law. That's exactly why I'm having this conversation. But somehow it became controversial to teach about things that are actually written in halakha. שהם חוששים לדעה אחרת, לא כמו שפסק השולחן ערוך. They concern themselves with all kinds of opinions that the Shulchan Aruch didn't care about. והמחמירים ומוסיפים חומה על חומה ונכשלים בכולה ובכולות שיוצאים מתוך חומרתם. He says, and people add stringency on top of stringency, on top of stringency, and they end up being lenient in things that they should not be lenient in at all because they're being so strict in one place. It's just a simple fact. If you take this room is dark, and you take a flashlight and you shine it on that wall. If you focus so much on that wall, inevitably there will be less light on this wall. It's not because someone made a choice. When you choose to focus all of your effort in one part of the Torah, inevitably you lose somewhere else something. This is a must in halakha. And therefore when you're deciding to be strict, you must weigh all the possibilities. What is going to come out of my actions? I want to discuss in a minute one of those There are many problems that come out of being strict. והתקיים בנו בדיוק מה שחזו חז"ל ברוח קודשם, and it fulfilled in us exactly what the sages in the Talmud wrote. עתידה תורה שתשתכח מישראל. Our rabbis say in the Masechet Shabbat, in the tractate of Talmud Shabbat, one day the Torah will be forgotten from the Jewish people. The Jewish people will no longer know the Torah. ופירש רבי שמעון בן יוחאי. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai says, I don't understand. How are we going to forget the Jewish people? How are all the Jews going to forget the Torah? How could it be? He says, you know what it means when it says to forget the Torah? It says, ישוטטו לבקש דבר השם ולא ימצאו, שלא ימצאו הלכה ברורה ומשנה ברורה במקום אחד. People will no longer find clarity in Jewish learning and in Jewish law anymore. Everything will become confused. Everything will become complicated. Everything will become, it's too complicated to explain. It's too difficult to understand. That's the definition of forgetting the Torah. The Torah is clear. The Torah is straightforward. Jewish law is not complicated. Why is it so complicated? Because people have chosen to complicate Jewish law with all kinds of things that they're not even part of Torah mitzvot. And so how do you judge a generation? Did this generation forget the Torah? The answer of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai is obviously a generation which doesn't know how to follow Jewish law, which everything is a concern. Maybe this, maybe the raft, maybe the water, maybe the bathing suit. That generation has already forgotten the clarity of having a Torah. Unfortunately, we have merited to live till that day. And the purpose of everything we're going to study here is not to simplify things, but to show you how simple it already is. The Torah is clear, the Torah is easy. It's something that is accessible and that every person here can learn for themselves. There was a famous Ashkenazi rabbi, and he was bashing before and now in prison. His name was Rabbi Shamshon Raphael Hirsch. Have you heard of him? The famous Rav Hirsch. I always see him at the bottom of Chumash, things like that. Rav Hirsch wrote a book of all kinds of Torah ideas, and one of the ideas that he writes there, I really enjoyed. You know, the first thing that happens when you tell somebody, well, my rabbi said it's okay to do something, or I studied in the shiur that you're allowed to do that. They'll say, what do you think, my rabbi doesn't know what your rabbi said? Of course, and he still decided it's not allowed. Okay, I mean, that you could say that. But there are a lot of rabbis who know a lot of things, but even though they know a lot, they don't know what to do with that information. You ever met a person who's brilliant, but they try to have a conversation with them, and they just, there's no one home to have a conversation with. Just because you know a lot doesn't mean you know what to do with what you know. And Rav Hirsch says the same thing. Yesh Chachamim, source 2. There are some sages. Charifim. They're very sharp, these sages. Ach en charifutam ela charifut shel hevel. But their sharpness is wasted sharpness. It's useless. Im baa lesharet et hitalut ha'atzmit. So sometimes people are so brilliant only because they're arrogant and they're egotistical, and it's really nice. I know a lot, and I can make you feel stupid by how much I know. So that's why a lot of people choose to know things. It doesn't come to serve Hashem, it doesn't come to serve the people, it comes to serve themselves. They want to show you how smart they are. Albert Einstein, I like him. He once said that if you can't explain a complicated matter simply, you didn't truly understand. I once heard someone say, hey, what do you do for a living? And there's an engineer. Engineers, no offense, my father's an engineer. Engineers in general like to complicate the way they answer things. You ask them something and they answer you in a very different way than you would have thought. Did I share the joke last week about engineers? Last time, did I talk about engineers? Hot air balloons, you know what I was talking about? I don't think it was here. I don't remember what I teach anymore. What I teach, what I say.
So nobody else remembers what you
They say one guy was standing in a Home Depot parking lot, and all of a sudden he hears someone screaming, hey, sir! He looks up and he sees a hot air balloon. And it's hovering over the parking lot, and the guy in the hot air balloon says, sir, can you tell me where I am? So he looks up and says, you're about 30 feet off the ground, and you're moving about 3.5 miles an hour. He says, you must be an engineer. He said, how do you know I'm an engineer? He says, because I asked you a question, and you gave me an answer that's absolutely useless for me. He says, and you, my friend, must be a manager. I said, a manager? How do you know I'm a manager? He said, because you're all the way up there. You have no idea how you got there, but it's my fault. Engineers have their own way to look at the world. Lo ba lesharet et ha'emet. Sometimes people, they learn Torah, but it's not there to find the truth. It's there because I want to show people how smart I am. V'chach amu chazal, that's what our rabbis tell us, lefum chupa shabeshta. Shibashta. It depends how you want to put the vowels in. The sharper a person is, sometimes the more perverted their logic can become. Our rabbis tell us that a true Torah scholar there's 150 ways to make a bug kosher, to make a pig kosher. You're not a real Torah scholar if you can't convince me with 150 ways how it's okay to violate Shabbat. You're not a real Torah scholar if you can't convince me that pigs are actually kosher. Why? With logic, you can do anything you want. A sharp person can convince you of anything in the world, logically. But not everything is true just because you explained it a certain way. The more sharp a person is, sometimes the more fantastical their lie can become. Not everyone who knows a lot knows the truth. There are some people who are so brilliant that all the rooms of Jewish law are open to them. But they don't even know the practical realities of what they're talking about. Sometimes you hear people talk about kashrut, but they've never in their life seen an actual kitchen before. There's some rabbis probably never even saw their own kitchen. They don't know. They don't know what they're talking about. And therefore they're making rulings, but they've never seen what they're ruling about. Not everybody who rules in Jewish law knows what he's talking about. I'm afraid to say what I'm about to say, but I'm going to say it anyways. Every once in a while you get a message that in Israel, a rabbi this, a rabbi that got up and said that anyone who has an iPhone is going to go to hell and they got to burn the iPhones and you got to break it. You know what I'm talking about? Because iPhones are the worst thing that ever happened to the world. I don't know why Android pays these people so much money, but the person who's ruling about the iPhone, I promise you, has never in their life used an iPhone. They don't know what they're talking about. Rather, someone told them, hey, you know what an iPhone is? It's something you could do a lot of avelot with. Well, of course, hey, you got to break your iPhone, get rid of your iPhone. But it's highly irresponsible of a chacham, of a rabbi, to rule on something that they don't know what they're talking about. People ask me questions a lot. Hey, what's this, have this way to cook meat with a pole, you know what I'm talking about? What's it called? Sous vide, that's it. All those letters to say that? Sous vide. They ask me, how can I do this? A meat pot, a milk pot? I said, the truth is that I would love to help you out, but I've never done this before. So I can't rule in something that I don't know how it works. So I know people say, oh, come on, this guy doesn't even know how the sous vide works. Okay, I'd rather be a fool than to say something that's wrong. You have to know what your limitations are. You don't know everything. You don't study Jewish law only from the codes of Jewish law. Rather, you have to have also a healthy outlook, a proper outlook on life. There's some people There's some people that are so great that they're as great as Goliath. Remember Goliath in the Tanakh? Goliath. And because they're so great, they trip over themselves. And they're so tall, they keep hitting their head in the doorpost. And there are some rabbis that they stand in the battlefield, come on, David Katan, like a tiny little King David. He's not that big, he's not a giant. But they know exactly which stone to throw in the right place. And because of that, they win the war. It's an important thing to know here. Then not everyone has to be an expert in everything to know what they're talking about. There are some people that are not giants. They're not Goliath. Goliath loses at the end of the day. To who? To King David, a short little guy in the battlefield. But what was special about King David? He knew which rock to throw in the right place at the right time, and he won the war. In Jewish law, it's not about all what you know, but also how you apply the knowledge that you have. And it's very important. They always say that 5th volume of the Code of Jewish Law, there's only 4. The 5th volume is called Common Sense. And common sense is not so common, unfortunately. You have to know how to apply the things that you study to the people and the places which you're in. It's not a lecture, it's a class. So if you want to say something or fight something or argue something, please do so. You don't have to raise your hand. Speak. Source 3. You see where I'm at? Minayin shekol hamosif goreah. The Talmud of Masechet Sanhedrin says, how do you know that everybody who adds to the Torah is really taking away from the Torah? Shneimar, it says, Ki amar Elohim, because God said, Lo tochlu mimeno velo tig'u bo. Who says this verse here? Hanan, who said this pasuk?
Thinking about something else.
Look, this is a story of Adam and Chava. Adam and Chava are in the Garden of Eden, and Hashem, the Creator, commands Adam, hey, there's a tree over here. Don't eat from this tree. So what does Adam do?
Don't touch it.
He's the first rabbi. He makes a fence. Says, hey, my dear wife, I want you to know, don't even touch this tree.
The Nachash.
Who?
The Nachash said don't.
No.
No, Adam says, don't touch. Nachash said, touch, you'll see nothing happens. He touches, nothing happens, just up, so now you can eat.
No, that was the story.
Oh, that was
That's the Rabbanit of Hashem, so as the Rabbanit said,
I know how to take a 5-hour story and turn it into 5 minutes. My husband takes 5-minute stories and it's 3 days later he's still in the middle of this introduction.
I have a son like that too.
Exactly.
So you see, how did the snake win? The snake won by showing you, hey, touch the tree, nothing happens to you, right? And what we realize from the story is sometimes you make a fence and then people break the fence. And then what you've done is really a disservice. You didn't make a fence to the Torah. If people break the fence, they see nothing happens to them, then ultimately they're going to violate the law that you actually tried to place there. And therefore the rabbis tell us, anyone who adds to the Torah is really taking away from it. I had a fascinating discussion once with a Christian. We have a bedin for conversions. At the time, this person was still before even the decision to go through a conversion process. He said, one thing I never understood. He said, if you guys actually think that the Torah is divine, that God wrote this book, why are you so busy trying to fix it? Why isn't it good enough for you? Why isn't what the creator of the universe said good enough for you? Why do you always have to be more religious than God? And I don't think that we ever stop to think about that. The people who are trying to be so religious and so holy and so pious and do so many extra things, essentially what they're saying is, hey, Hashem, you didn't give us a perfect book. I know how to make it better. What greater audacity is that than the creator? I mean, I should just say that and end the class. That's enough. But somehow I have to bring to you rabbis that are going to tell you that it's not good to question the creator. So let's do it. Source 4. I'm going to read this one outside. This is again from our parents, my rabbi. You see, we just hated a little bit on Adam. Adam, he added a fence to the Torah, right? But don't our rabbis themselves tell us, Asusia la Torah, make a fence for the Torah? No, they say that themselves. So here there's a contradiction. The rabbis are saying anything you add to the Torah is bad. But add things to the Torah. How do you reconcile this seeming contradiction? Lopez gives 2 answers. The first answer, it's okay to add fences to the Torah. Our rabbis have the permission to add fences to the Torah, but the education has to be correct. Meaning, when we add fences to the Torah, we must be very clear with the people. What we're about to add is not prohibited. If you violate this, nothing will happen to you. We're adding to the Torah because we wish to keep people away from there. I have a fence around my house. I don't actually, but someone has a fence around their house because they don't want people walking into their windows. I want it to be a little bit harder for you to break into my house. That's why people put fences around their house. When the HaShamayim put a fence around the Torah, they're not pretending that this is actually what's prohibited. They just want you to know, hey, this is a very important commandment, and we added this fence. The moment I know that this is an addition, this is rabbinic, this is a custom, this is a law, this is from the Torah, this is from our rabbis, once I know that, then it's so much easier to understand Jewish law. I don't think that everything is not allowed. Not everything is equal. The second answer, there are some mitzvot which are already hard enough. Some things they don't need fences, you don't need extras. And therefore, our rabbis are telling us there are times where it's proper to add a fence, and there are times where it's not proper to add a fence. So why do our rabbis tell us to add fences to the Torah? To keep us away from problems. They're allowed to do that. You're allowed to do it too. You ever make rules with your kids and they ask you, but why? And what do you tell them? I said so. Now hopefully when they're 25, they're not still listening to you because you said so. It's either because they've learned to appreciate your logic, or it's because you've been able to explain why this is important. But at entry-level Judaism, our rabbis say, hey, don't do this. And you'll find that as we study more Jewish law, that the more Jewish law you know, the more things you're able to do, because even some of the things that our rabbis don't let us do, they only don't let us do them because people don't know any better. But if you know better, you might actually be able to violate some of those things. How does that make any sense?
It's like an age limit.
Very good, exactly that. I'm not going to give you a practical example. I don't want anyone to go home like last week. No, I said pigs are kosher. It's a little bit. Let's say we make a fence, and the fence is because maybe people will think that you're doing that. Well, or maybe you'll come to do something else. Once you already don't know who you are, you're a Torah scholar, you're educated, and you don't have to worry that maybe you're going to come and do that. You grew up already. You passed that age limit. I want to read you the first line of source 5 and then take a tangent with you if it's okay. I gotta talk to something that doesn't make noise. No, I don't want that. Rambam. We like that Rambam. But the Rambam is quoting from the Mishnah. The Mishnah in Sotah says, Amar Rabbi Yoshua. Rabbi Yoshua says, Chasid shoteh, a righteous, how do you translate shoteh properly? It's not crazy, it's a stupid person. A foolish righteous person. A righteous fool, can we call him that? A righteous fool. Rasha arum, isha prusha, makat prushim, I don't want to translate those. Harei elu mevarei olam. These four people, the first of them being the righteous fool, are from those who destroy the world. Who is the righteous fool? The classic case of a righteous fool, can someone know the classic case of a righteous fool? He's walking by the river. What does he see?
Drowning woman.
A drowning woman. She's drowning in the river. Help, help me, she's screaming. What does he do? Sorry lady, I can't help you, I can't touch you. And he doesn't save her. And she dies. Says the Mishnah, this kind of righteous person is from those who destroy the world. How did your righteousness get in the way of saving someone's life? You think that's a case that can never happen? When I was in Yeshiva, in the East Coast, it was 1 o'clock in the morning on a Friday night, and the fire alarm went off in the dormitories. And we all ran out of the dormitory. Happened to not have been my dormitory, so I didn't run out. I only ran out when I heard the fire trucks. We had 3 big dormitory buildings. Everyone ran outside, and it took them about an hour to call the fire department. Because nobody was sure if they're allowed to call the fire department on Shabbat when the building was burning down. So they decided that they were going to send somebody to run and wake up the Rosh Shiva. So he ran down the other side of the 90-acre campus. Makes it to the other side of the campus, wakes up the rabbi, Rabbi, there's a... Of course, I have to call the fire department. When the fire department came, they took a roll call. One of the guys was missing. Happened to be that, not like here, what we build in California, you light a fire here, the house will just blow, it's like a fire matches. In the East Coast, they're building out of bricks and cinder blocks and those kind of things, so fires can be a little more contained. One guy decided he wanted to go to sleep, but he left his desk light on. This is before LEDs. And how did he make the room dark? He took the lamp and he shoved it onto his pillow, because that's going to make the room dark. And the pillow burst up in flames. And the fire alarm went off, and they evacuated the building. And one guy ran out and forgot to wake up his roommate. And he was sleeping through the whole thing. Sprinklers, the whole thing he was sleeping through. And they came, and Baruch Hashem, because everything was in cinder blocks, the fires, they spread through air conditioner units. That's how fires spread. But this guy was safe. They got him out of there. And I can only imagine, the rabbis spent the next 2 months talking about righteous fools. We can imagine if, God forbid, somebody would have died that night. All recently. Because it happened recently?
Somebody went to check with the rabbi about a fire. When they came back, his family was dead. Some of them were dead. He's cool.
Mine's not. This is a righteous fool. Righteous fool sounds funny, but it's not funny at all. It's when someone takes their religion to the point that is so extreme that other people will get hurt from it. So here's my tangent before I tell you what the Rambam says. I'm reading from a book, Rabbi Dr. Benny Lau. It has it in Hebrew and English, about our sages. The Talmud mentions 7 kinds of Pharisees. What are Pharisees? Who's a Pharisee? Yeah, we're Pharisees. You're a Pharisee, like it or not. We're Pharisees. Bullshit. We're from the Jews that were not with the Christians, we weren't with the Sadducees, we weren't with the Essenes. We were Pharisees. Bullshit. The Talmud describes several different types of obsessive religious behavior. There are more Jews in LA than in San Diego, so you probably know more of these people than I do. But let's read about them. The Shechmi Pharisee is one who acts in the manner of Shechem. He's from Shechem. That is, the person whose actions are motivated entirely by his own benefit, such as the circumcision of the men of Shechem. They did a mitzvah to circumcise themselves, but why did they do that? They wanted to get married. So they did a circumcision. They wanted business. They did a circumcision. There's hardly need to even mention this type because all of his acts are purely for his own sake and not for the sake of heaven. He may fulfill commandments with the very best Pharisees, but his motivations are entirely self-centered without any trace of godliness. The Rambam would mention somebody who studies Torah because he likes that when he walks into the room, everybody stands for him. That's his motivation to study Torah. The Nikfi Pharisee, one who knocks his feet in the ground. This is the person who walks heel after toe, who avoids lifting his foot for fear of not finding where to tread, and so he drags one foot after the other, ruining his feet and going nowhere. This is a foot-dragging religiosity, based on fear, which brings a person and those around him to spiritual paralysis. Remember that word and write it down, that phrase. Spiritual paralysis. I made a video not so long ago called Abandoning Orthodoxy. And since then, people decided that I abandoned Orthodoxy. It's true, I did. One of the reasons for that is because of spiritual paralysis. The Orthodox Jewish community is frozen in fear. They're going nowhere. And when you go nowhere, when a fish stops swimming, he drowns. He doesn't just float, he drowns. The Jewish community is so frozen, is so paralyzed, that they fulfilled everything written here. Any innovation, any untrodden territory seems to him to be an impassable minefield, and this kind of fear paralyzes. It gets better. The Kizai Pharisee. What does Hakazah mean? Anyone know the Hebrew word? Hakazah.
Hakazah, to...
Hakazat dam. When you bloodlet, you know there's this thing where people let blood? Yeah. What am I talking about, your colleagues? One whose blood spurts out on the walls. That's why he doesn't want to be in the video. He averts his eyes from seeing evil.
Give one of those masks.
When he thinks he might see a woman in the street, he closes his eyes so that he bumps into walls, injuring his head. The description of the bleeding wound here is significant. In his attempt to avoid what he sees as sin, this person is capable of shedding his own blood. Such a Jew ends up bruised and wounded, and his fearful approach is condemned. There are people who are so scared of their Judaism that they end up hurting themselves. When I was in Israel, we once got a phone call to the Shevat from a mikveh lady, a lady in the mikveh. You know, according to Jewish law, do you have to trim your nails before you go to the mikveh? No. No. According to Jewish custom, an old Jewish custom, we trim our nails. And it's a righteous thing to do, it's a proper thing to do. This lady was suffering clearly from some obsessive compulsive disorder. Forgive me for this example, but she would cut her nails until she bled from her fingertips. And we were called in as the rabbis of her community to help her out. There's a person who's hurting herself because of how religious she's trying to be. That's not religion. That's a Pharisee who's condemned by our rabbis. That's too much. You're hurting yourself in your religiosity. It's too much. The pestle Pharisee. This is the fourth one. One whose head is bent in humility when he walks. This is the person whose sense of fear makes him want to simply disappear. The sheer weight of his overwhelming fear of heaven crushes any possible expression of his own personality. This kind of Pharisee reflects the type of excessive humility which leads to total self-negation. That makes sense. Religiosity that leads to self-negation is not healthy. But there are entire religious groups today in the Jewish community whose whole theology is self-negation. They even call it bitul. They want to nullify themselves. Bitul atzmi. I was at someone's house today in the afternoon. a different kind of Torah scholar than what I'm used to. And I went to the bookshelf and I couldn't find anything to study. A lot of books, but nothing that was worth spending time on. So, and I saw one book of work from a famous rabbi. And I took it down, and he had a whole chapter. How there is no greater evil than loving oneself. And I read that, I thought, maybe it's just like one of those catchy titles, I'll read it for real. This rabbi is intent on any kind of love for oneself is a hatred of the Creator. And this is exactly the kind of Pharisee we're talking about. It's somebody who just wants to disappear because they don't have even the right to exist. My last one, there's a lot of these in North American Jewry. The what else should I do and I will do it Pharisee. One who is obsessed with fear, constantly looking for more strictures to obey. They're the people who ran out of 613 commandments. They already got bored from those. They're looking for new things to do. There are people that I meet that say, Rabbi, when I was growing up and I was religious growing up, I never heard about these things. In the 60 years that I've been alive, there's a whole new world of Jewish law that I never heard of before. And sometimes I just have to tell them because 60 years ago, those weren't Jewish laws. Those became Jewish law. People turned them into social norms, and now everyone's doing them. He can never relax because he's convinced that there must always be some additional obligation, some new stricture, some new task. There must be something more he can do to improve his worship. He wants to achieve religious perfection, but only feels a sense of his own imperfection. This kind of obsession can create tremendous tension and social pressure. Anyone know any Pharisees that are unhealthy in their lifestyle?
I'll take them on pro bono, doesn't it?
This last Pharisee is scary. He's one that wishes to achieve religious perfection, but he can never reach it. Because the more he knows, and the more he studies, and the more he grows, the more he realizes, it's never going to end. It doesn't end. Religiosity is this black hole that I'm going to jump into it, and it's like Alice in Wonderland. I'm going to fall deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, and I'm just going to lose my mind. I'll be a crazy person. But I mentioned here, and I once spoke in Los Angeles about this. In general, the Jewish community, I can't make a rule for everybody. But the Jews that I know, and I was speaking at that time to a predominantly Persian Jewish community. That Jewish community, before I was born, even if it had people there who were not entirely observant of Jewish law, was a community that had overwhelmingly positive attitudes to Torah, to Hashem, and to religiosity. In general, that was the attitude of that community. It was a community where even the people, like most traditional communities, Ashkenazim and Sfaradim, even those who weren't entirely observant, felt very proud of those people and their families who were observant. They looked very positively at their synagogues and the community and the rabbi, even if they didn't go. And somehow in the last 30 years of fanaticizing the Jewish religion, what we have done to communities that used to be lovers of Hashem and Torah and Mitzvot, actually their greatest fear is, what's going to happen if my kid becomes too Jewish? So that's the craziest thing in the world. What's going to happen? I don't know, rather your kid's going to be a drug addict, there's going to be an alcoholic. Anything's better than being religious. And they're not lying, because their kid becomes religious and they fall, as Alice in Wonderland does. And they meet all kinds of psychedelic bunny rabbits. And they start to do crazy things. They don't eat anymore with their parents. They can't drink water in their house. They can't even pray with them anymore in the bar mitzvahs. They don't go to the family weddings. They become crazy. And this person thinks that they're only being religious to themselves. What they don't realize is that collectively they have harmed the entire Jewish people. Because we now have Jewish people that don't even want to hear about being Jewish. You mention one thing to them about a Bet Knesset, about a rabbi, about Hashem, and they want to throw you out the front door. And it's not their fault. Listen to me, it's not their fault. I would do the same exact thing. In fact, I almost did. And that's why I became a rabbi. But I said I could either run away from everything and have a life where I don't have to deal with Jewish people anymore, or I could hopefully try to show the Jewish people that there's another way. There's a reason why 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, even our grandparents that weren't so crazy religious that loved being Jewish, they remember the Pesach Seder as the most beautiful night of the year. You get together, you sing songs, you eat food, you talk with the family. It's the one time a year the whole family gets together. You know what the Pesach Seder looks like today? People are eating matzot over plastic bags. People are weighing the amount of matzah in with lettuce they have to eat. People aren't eating at each other's houses because, you eat things that are there. I don't eat that. Pesach has become a night. I see this in my Beit Knesset. I have a rule in my Beit Knesset. I expect the ladies in my Kehillat to come to the synagogue on the first night of Pesach. Not in a mean way. I always tell them, it's the holiest night of the year. All these stupid guests that are coming to your house, your husband who rolls into Beit Knesset with his big pot belly. He didn't do anything, they didn't do anything, they didn't work, they didn't cook, they didn't clean. All of a sudden you have to give up on your experience in the Beit Knesset. You have to give up on sitting at the Pesach Seder and reading the Haggadah because some people want to eat. Because you had to clean for 2 months before Pesach. So by the time the Seder comes around, you're falling asleep at the table. It's not fair. Pesach used to be a beautiful holiday. It used to be a family holiday. People would stay up the whole night singing and telling stories and catching up with family. And now it looks like a home of horrors. And we can't have that happening. But you can only do that if you study Jewish law well. Can I go back to the source sheet? Source 5. If you didn't love the Rambam until today, I hope that you're going to love him now. In the bold words in source 5. Chasid shoteh. Rambam says, listen, I know what the Talmud says is a righteous fool, but I want to give you my definition of a righteous fool. Inyano, the concept of what does it mean to be a righteous fool? Hagzama bizhirut uvidikduk. It's a person who exaggerates in their observance of Jewish law. Ad shenimas be'enei bnei adam, until he becomes repulsive in the eyes of other human beings. This guy's so religious, she's so religious, I don't want anything to do with him. I don't want nothing to do with her. They turn people off from being Jewish. There are a lot of religious people like that. Oseh ma'asim she'eno chayav. He does all kinds of things that he's not obligated in. V'ka'elu amar. And that's what it means, shoteh b'chasiduto, someone who's foolish in his righteousness. V'amru, and they say in the first chapter of Talmud Yerushalmi, Tractate Shabbat, kol mishehu, I should say who, not he, kol mishehu patur midavar v'osehu nikra hediot. Anybody who's exempt for something and chooses to do it anyways is called hediot. You can imagine what that word is in English? He's an ignoramus, he's a fool, he's a stupid person. Why are you trying to be much more religious than Hashem? You need to do extra things, you ran out. The Rambam says if you're so religious that you're turning people off from being Jewish, you can now get a certificate that you're from the 4 people that the Talmud says are destroyers of the world. You love the Rambam?
Yeah, you're destructive people.
Destructive people. How much? It's a destroying the world. Okay, but how bad is it really? It's nice when you have these concepts in Jewish life. You shouldn't be too strict, you should be nice to each other. Those are nice concepts, but you have to plug that into what it actually says in Jewish law. And when I try to be observant and do these things, it doesn't normally work out together. But then I see people going out that way. If for whatever reason you have to leave early, you can go whatever door. You don't have to sneak out behind me. You can go wherever you need to go at whatever time you need to go. The bottom of page 1, source 6. Is it worse to say that pig is kosher?
Yes.
Or that another kosher food under certification, you just happen not to like the rabbi because he didn't come to your bar mitzvah, is not kosher? What's worse? To say that pigs are kosher, or that the coffee that comes from that place is not kosher? Which is worse?
The second.
Both distorted.
Talmud says, "Kashem she'asur letaheret hatameh." Just like you cannot impurify that which is pure, you can't purify that which is impure. Kach asur letameh tadahor. So too you cannot impurify that which is pure. It's the same thing. In the Jewish community, we have this attitude as if you do more, well, I respect that you can do more. You always hear that, I respect how much you do. But the moment you do less, the Jewish community comes after you like a pack of wolves. According to halakha, there's no different from being a person who doesn't believe or observe any of the Torah to a person who adds things to the Torah. Those are the same people. There's no mitzvah to be religious or to be strict. The mitzvah is to follow Jewish law. And any deviance of Jewish law, in any direction in which you go, is a deviation. It doesn't make a difference. I said last time, it doesn't make a difference if you're going 100 on a highway or 20 miles an hour on a highway. Both of those people are violating the law. Both of those people are a danger to the other people that are on the street. In different ways, perhaps, but they're both equally wrong. Top of page 2. The verse in Malachi, the prophet Malachi, he says, Torat emet hayta befihu. There was a Torah of truth in his mouth. Ve'avla lo nimtza b'svatav, and there was no iniquity on his lips. So what kind of praise is that of a person? What does it mean there was a Torah of truth in his mouth? Shelo timet et ahor v'lo tieret et hamet. That he didn't prohibit, he didn't impurify that which is pure, and he didn't purify that which is impure. And there was no iniquity on his lips. He did not permit that which is forbidden, and he also did not forbid that which is permitted. You ever ask a rabbi a question like, hey, can I eat this? Can I do that? Can I observe this? And they'll say, well, it's better not to. You know the answer? What does that mean? It's better not to. Is it allowed or not allowed? Well, I'll tell you it's better not to. That's not an answer. That answer is one who says, I don't know, and therefore I'm telling you, just don't do it. There's a prohibition to act that way. For sure, if you don't know Jewish law and you're trying to err on the side of caution, that's okay. But if you're a Torah scholar, how are you not knowing? If you don't know, say you don't know. But how can you prohibit something that is permitted? I'm allowed to eat this. I'm allowed to do this on Shabbat. I'm allowed to do this on Passover. I'm allowed to... So why are you telling me no? Who are you to not let me do something? HaPeretz in little letters over here says that it's an iniquity, it's an avirah for a person to prohibit things that are permitted. We can't settle for less than that. We can't settle for less than someone saying, hey, but sometimes I'm guilty of doing something similar. I don't know something, but I'd rather always say I don't know something. There are times where I'm uncomfortable in a certain area in Jewish law. It's not. I feel like it's too big for me. It's above my pay grade. But that means that I shouldn't give an answer about it. But to give this answer of it's better not to, or don't do that, or don't do this, or we won't let our community eat this. We have social and communal standards. What does that mean? That means that Hashem decided that this is what Jewish society's standard should be. That means our rabbis confirmed that this is what Jewish and social standards should be. But you decided somehow, because your sisterhood had a meeting with the brotherhood and the executive committee of the synagogue, they decided that no, Jewish law, we're changing that. We have our own protocols and norms. This happens all the time. I told you I'm in a big deal for conversion. Sometimes the people that come to us, not because they're not worthy of joining the Jewish people, it's because another rabbi says, we would love to help you out, but it's against our protocol to help you. Which protocol? I once had to argue with a rabbi about this. I'll tell you a story. There was a lady who many years ago finished her giyur process, her conversion process here in Los Angeles. And she had a young child at the time. She was divorced from her ex-husband, who didn't go through a process. And at the time of her studying for a conversion, or 3 years, whatever she spent studying, the rabbis promised her that her child would be able to go to the mikveh with her, and then she'd be able to raise him like a Jewish kid. And when it came time for her to go to the mikveh, I was like, I'm not so comfortable letting him go now. So let's just wait till his bar mitzvah. Don't worry, come to me before his bar mitzvah, I'm going to take care of it. So she raised her kid, observant, he only knows Judaism, he doesn't know anything else, has nothing to... Came time for his bar mitzvah. It's 2 months before her bar mitzvah. She had an appointment with the Beit Din here in Los Angeles. She came to the Beit Din, and the Beit Din says, sorry, he has a non-Jewish father that he visits 2 weeks out of every year in the summer. We don't like that he's visiting a non-Jewish father. So unless he's willing to sever his ties with his father, we can't put him in the mikveh. It's a kid who wears a kippah, a tzitzit, goes to Jewish school, he can read the Torah, it's a beautiful voice. When he goes to his father in the summer with suitcases of kosher food and things to do on Shabbat, he's a tough guy, this one. It's 2 months before the bar mitzvah. She's waiting 13 years for this. And so I get a phone call. Is there anything you could do to help? I said, which kind of Beit Din would say that you have to sever ties with your biological father or else we can't convert you to Jew? So I was naive and I called the rabbi in the Beit Din. And boy, did I get the shot in my life. It's against our protocols and standards. I said, who made your protocols and standards? You made them, so change them. I can't change them. There's 2 other rabbis in the Beit Din. I said, so talk to them too. You want me to call them also? I said, show me one place in Jewish law where it says that if your father doesn't go through the conversion process, I can't convert you. He says, it doesn't say that in Jewish law. I said, so then who are you to create an extra halachic standard? You know that sound where you can't slam the phone anymore. It doesn't happen anymore, but it just goes, silence on the other end, or your phone goes, deet, deet, it's over. That was the end of the phone call. So I did the gear. Baruch Hashem. The child is part of the Jewish people. It's already a long time. The child is part of the Jewish people, part of the Jewish community. But on which grounds do you have, you should see that, you should see this kid. 2 months before his bar mitzvah, you're not going to be able to go to the Torah. Oh, I missed the best part. I said, so what about this kid? He's gone to Jewish school his whole life. Where's he going to do his bar mitzvah? Like his friends are all waiting for his bar mitzvah. He said, oh, you guys should fundraise in your community and send him on a trip to Israel. And they'll pretend they did a bar mitzvah in Israel. That way he doesn't get embarrassed. If that's the state of the Jewish Union, that's what we're up to today. Nobody cares what it says in Jewish law. Should I tell you halakha? Halakha says that if a mother comes to the Beit Din with her child, and she says, hey, I don't want to be Jewish, but I want my child to be Jewish. What does the Beit Din do?
Charge her $80,000 and that's
okay.
your
Okay, after the $80,000, what do you do? You take him. You take the child. Even if she's not going to be Jewish, she's going to raise him. But the fact that she came, that's enough for us. Find a Beit Din in the world who'll do such a thing. I didn't come to talk about conversion today. Source 8. Shach. The Shach is a commentary on the Shulchan Aruch. If you open up the Code of Jewish Law, you'll find him over here on the outside of this is the Shulchan Aruch, and these are the commentaries on the outside of the page. The Shach says, he's an Ashkenazi commentary on the Shulchan Aruch, one of the stricter variety. So he's not from those who's always giving us leniencies. The Shach says, Kashem she'asur lehatir et ha'asur. Just like it is forbidden to permit things which are prohibited. Just like it's forbidden to say that pigs are kosher. Kach asur le'asor et ha'mutar. It's forbidden to prohibit things which are really permitted. Afilu b'shad goy, even if it's a non-Jew's property, even if it's not even a Jewish person coming in front of you to ask this question. V'afilu she'en b'makom hefsed, and even if nobody's going to lose any money by you being strict. Nobody's losing anything. It's a theoretical question. Mipnei she'al harov, because I wish to tell you a rule, says the Shach. Because the majority of times, yesh bo tzad kula, isu. Every time you're strict somewhere, you're actually going to end up violating something somewhere else. Lefichach, and therefore, im hutzrach, shitgalgel v'yavo kula ad hachamei advarim. It could be that even right now you don't see the leniency that came out of this, but you were strict here, and 100 cause and effects later, something happened because of that. And therefore, said the Shach, that even if you need to be strict in a matter because you're not sure, you must tell the people that they're asking you a question. She'en, and last 2 lines, She'en ha'isu barur ela she'anachnu mechuyev lachmir. It's not clear to me that this is really prohibited, but at this point in time, I have to be strict about it. You have to at least be honest about that. Don't say no. Say, really, at this point in time in my education and my understanding of these laws, it's not allowed. So now I want to give you examples. What really could go wrong if you're strict in Jewish law? Like, if you're lenient in Jewish law, so you might come to eat something you're not allowed to do. You might come to do something that Shabbat you're not allowed to do. What could happen if you're too religious? What could happen? Look at source 9. This is a really awkward source. Before I translate it, it's really awkward. And I actually don't know how to interpret it on a philosophical level. Because there's ramifications here. How could this have happened to somebody? I don't know how to answer that question right now. And if we wish to have a class on that at a different point in time, I'm more than happy to. But for today, I'm coming to talk about the legal ramifications of the story. Rav Ada bar Ahava. There was a famous rabbi. His name was Rav Ada, the son of Ahava. Ityalid lei hahu yinuka. He had a child born to him and his wife. Shehu mahul. The child was already circumcised. The child was born without any foreskin. Now, a child who's born already with a brit milah, does he have to have a brit milah? Kind of. What do?
Just the blood.
We just prick and take a drop of blood out, and that's it. There's nothing to cut. There's no brit milah to do. And the rabbis ruled that if a brit milah falls out on Shabbat, do you do a circumcision on Shabbat?
Yes.
Yes. Except for
C-section.
if it's a C-section. If the baby wasn't born in a natural birth, then it doesn't push off Shabbat, and you wait until the next day. Rabbi Ovadia Yosef had an interesting opinion also that if you wait a day for a brit milah, it's like eating on Yom Kippur. It's the same prohibition. Rabbi Ovadia Yosef said that if you're going to do a brit milah on Shabbat, and many people are going to violate Shabbat because of you, it's better to do a brit milah on Sunday. He ruled that way. It's a very difficult ruling to comprehend, but this is something that he felt it important enough. So we normally don't push off a brit milah. It's very important on the 8th day. Yeah. Pasaka. Not just it wasn't just like an idea. Yeah. In a brit milah that is supposed to be on Shabbat, he would push it off. I was the one saying a brit milah on Shabbat. And the family didn't know, but they hired a whole camera crew. So it's Shabbat morning, all in Talito, there's a Torah out, it wasn't in my synagogue, and all of a sudden, these guys come up with, these like flash boxes, and it was a big camcorder on the shoulder, and like pushing around the beam, and nobody even knew what to do in that. It was an unbelievable situation for us. So in a case where a child is born already with a brit milah, we don't do that prick on Shabbat. We wait until Sunday. So this rabbi really wanted somebody to do a brit milah for his son. He didn't want to violate waiting after 8 days. Ahadre atlesar muhulai. He looked for 13 mohalim. He asked 13 mohalim, are you willing to do the brit milah of my son? And nobody wanted to do it. Why do they not want to do it?
They need to have.
Yeah, it's Shabbat. According to Jewish law, you don't have to do the brit today. Wait until tomorrow. Until he found one. When you ask 13 of the top mohalim, who do you get? You're always going to find one. I don't want a rabbi to do anything. Just pay him enough money. They once asked the Koska Rebbe, the Hasidic Rebbe, they said, Rabbi, it says that one of the requirements to be a judge and a bedin is that you have to be a kind of person who hates money. If you love money, you can't judge the people. And he says, where are we going to find a person who hates money? He said, for the right price, you'll find also a rabbi who hates money. So he found the mohel, the right price. One guy who was willing to do it on Shabbat. Now, when you already eliminated the top 13 mohalim, so you're already like in second tier mohalim. All the doctors, you couldn't find them, so you found the one that was willing to do the surgery that nobody else was willing to do. Ad shaveh k'ud shivche, until his son was unable to have children anymore. Amar, and he said, Tetili, I deserve this, the Avri Aderav, because I violated the teachings of Rav, who said you cannot do a brit milah on Shabbat. I told you already in the beginning, it's going to be awkward. Why does his son have to suffer? Because of his father's craziness? But this is a classic case of someone tried to be more religious than they had to, and the consequence lasted for life. This child could never have children. And why did this child not ever able to have children? Not even because of something they did. It's one of the cruelest things in the world. There's a posek in Yerushalayim, he put out a letter that if a person is born to parents who smoke, this child has the right to sue their parents in court when he grows up for any medical condition that he has.
Wow.
Because it's like a person who was murdering their child. I'm not here to judge anybody. I'm here to share that this idea is someone can suffer because of something that they never did. They didn't choose this, but it was done to them. Their dad was crazy religious, and now they can never have children. Our Chachamim say, you think, so what's the big deal? So I did a brit milah on Shabbat. The big deal is this. This is the big deal. He couldn't wait one day. He couldn't wait one day. And for that, his child suffered for eternity. Do you know how many children grew up in houses where their parents are from the righteous fools? And they suffer for the rest of their life with their relationship with the Creator, with Hashem, with Torah, with mitzvot, because of their parents. I had a student in Yerushalayim. It's like a cream of the crop. The other guy came into yeshiva in the beginning. I don't want to know you. I don't want to talk to the rabbis. I hate Torah. I don't want. Okay, fine. I don't pressure anybody. After a while, they started coming to our classes and everything like that. And around Chanukah time, started keeping Shabbat, eating kosher. One thing this kid never did, he would never put on tefillin. And so we asked this guy, hey, listen, you're doing Shabbat, you're eating kasher, you're wearing kippah, you're doing tzitzit, you're learning Torah the whole day. Why won't you put on tefillin? And he said, I will never give my mother that much satisfaction. Okay, what's going on with your mother? He said, my mother was so adamant that we had to put on her tefillin in the morning, that when we would wake up on Sunday morning and come to eat breakfast, she would take away our food and say, did you put on tefillin today? And if we said yes, she would say, roll up your sleeve. I want to see if there are any marks inside on your hand from the tefillin. And unless we had tefillin imprints on our skin, she wouldn't let us have breakfast. He said, Rabbi, I will be religious, I will learn Torah, but I will never make my mother that happy. His mother, in her stupidity, she thought that she was helping her son put on a tefillin and do a mitzvah. What do you get out of it? What did you get? You get a child who hates you for the rest of your life. For what purpose? People think, though, they're doing the right thing. It's not the right thing. Once I was at a house of somebody, a friend of mine. I went to eat dinner with him, and I stayed with him for Shabbat, lunch. He invited his brother-in-law over, and his brother-in-law had a son, 5 years old. And his son took off his tzitzit. By the way, does a 5-year-old have to wear tzitzit?
No.
Does a 25-year-old have to wear tzitzit?
No.
No, nobody has to wear tzitzit. You know that. No halakha to wear tzitzit. You have to wear if you're wearing a 4-corner garment, you have to put on a tzitzit. But even those people who wear tzitzit, I wear tzitzit, don't hate on me. Even those who wear tzitzit were probably not fulfilling a commandment with the size of tzitzit, where they're too small to fulfill an actual biblical commandment of tzitzit. Let's be honest. So this kid took off his tzitzit. He's 5. He doesn't have to wear a tzitzit. And the father said, Moshe, put on your tzitzit. And then this little kid, this is right. No. His dad said, I'm going to ask you one more time to put on your tzitzit, or else. The kid said, fine, I'm not putting on my tzitzit. And this dad, I was younger and more stupid at the time, but someone should have called Child Protective Service. He beat the kid into the ground. Hit him, maybe 3 minutes of hitting him. Hitting him like he was a terrorist or something. You think your kid is going to wear tzitzit? That's a great, it's the cutting edge, no pun intended, of Jewish education. This is how we're going to make the legacy last forever. Let's beat our kids till they're Jewish. 10. This is again from Rabbi Peretz. I say this one in honor of the man to my left, who I'm not allowed to say his name on camera. Bizmanenu nowadays, Rabu badat shel kashrut. We have myriads of kosher certifications. How many kosher certifications do you have? I counted on something I got from New York. 4 or 5 kosher certifications on the same bag of something that doesn't even need a kosher certification. Why do you have to have 5 kosher certifications or something? You think I can understand? They were all in Yiddish, so it's not even like the OU and the Star K. There's like super kosher times 5. You want to know about super kosher? When you go to Israel, people tell you the best kosher symbol to eat in Israel is the badatz, the famous ultra-Orthodox kosher symbol. But if there's anyone in the world who hates Israel more than the Arabs, is this badatz. They hate the Jewish people more than anybody else. They hate the state of Israel. They burn the flag of Israel. If you come there, you're not Jewish for them. And if I go there, I'm not Jewish for them. At least I got myself in trouble. I know why. They don't consider me Jewish. But they don't like anybody. These people, 2 years ago on Pesach, certified over a dozen products as kosher for Passover with no worries of kitniot that were actually 100% chametz. Because these people don't have a secular education. And they don't know how to translate ingredient labels. And there were certain products that are obvious derivatives of the 5 grains, but they had no idea that was a problem. They didn't say wheat flour, it said something else, and they allowed this into their market. All the people who don't eat rice and don't eat corn, but they ate chametz and pesach. It's the best kosher symbol in the world, this one. It says nowadays we have so many kosher symbols. Kol kibbutz anashim, and every group of people, machzik b'kashrut shelo. They only eat their own kosher symbol. That's okay, but you want to support, there are certain groups like our synagogue has a kosher symbol. We only want to support our synagogue. That's fine. You're allowed to support whoever you want. I can't tell you who to support financially. The problem is on the flip side. Uposel b'kashrut shel acharim shelo kedin. But it's not enough that they only support their own kosher symbols. They boycott the other kosher. They invalidate the other kosher symbols Shalok Kadin. There are some kosher symbols that are they're fake. I mean, they're not even kosher. But there are kosher symbols that are run by real Torah scholars, by real God-fearing people, and they just decide for whatever reason they don't like the color of their shirt or the fabric their kippah is made out of or some other great Jewish commandment, and they say that food is not kosher. Vinasa, let's now count. So they're being strict about kosher. What are the evils that come out of this? Can you count with me? Let's do one. Vinasa Am Yisrael mefuzar u'mforad. They cause the Jewish people to be separated from each other. You're so strict about kosher, but now your family won't eat at your bar mitzvah anymore. We can't even host guests anymore. You can't even have your friends over, your family over anymore, because you don't even know which kosher symbols people eat anymore. 2. You can't do the mitzvah of the Jewish community no longer is able to properly fulfill the mitzvah of hosting their guests. I was at one of my wife's family's events. My wife's family, they're pretty, 36 dead foxes, a lot of the stuff, they're religious. And I was at a Shevat brachot there. And I was sitting together, and I'm looking around, and I'm the only guy eating. Now, I'm in Borough Park, so I didn't ask him, is the food kosher? I mean, it has to be kosher here. But this one doesn't eat chicken from this company. This one doesn't eat meat from that one. And this one can't drink milk unless it's supervised by the other one does that. And so they all get together, but they won't eat each other's food. And there's a situation where my father-in-law, who's a rabbi, my father-in-law is a Talmid Chacham, he's a Torah scholar. Yeah, different than how we are, but he's a real Torah scholar. 50 years he was a rabbi of yeshiva. And when his own family comes to his house, they don't eat his food. And for them, if it was my father doesn't. If it was somebody from my family, they would get offended. I asked, he doesn't care. Everybody eats kosher their own way. What can I do? I'm the only one who goes and eats everything. I'm like I feel sometimes like I'm a scavenger. I can eat everything over here. Is that one really Jewish? No, I'm not. Okay. It's not normal. You've reached a situation where people don't go to each other's houses anymore. I forgot what we were up to number 4. People, they stop loving other people. They no longer are able to be in warm relationships with other human beings. They lose all sense of humanity. Even regular human beings can go and drink something together somewhere. You can't even go and drink with me ice water somewhere. You can't come with me somewhere. Tell me somewhere in Los Angeles is kosher enough for you to sit down with. No, sorry, I can't. Come to my kid's wedding. Don't eat. I'm not going to eat. Get yourself a glass of orange juice. Why not? I'm sorry, I can't come. Basic humanity we don't have anymore in the Jewish community. Decency. Number 7. What about the mitzvah of loving your fellow like yourself? We're not able to fulfill that mitzvah either. And those people that, so to speak, are so strict about kosher, they're violating that prohibition we mentioned before, number 8, about you're not allowed to prohibit things which are actually permitted. That's the same thing as saying that a pig is kosher. What number did I just tell you? 8. Number 9, what about wasting people's money? Is stealing no longer an avera? You go to the grocery store. You want to buy milk. How much does a gallon of milk cost you in the grocery store?
$3.70.
Oh my gosh, where do you live? $2.99. You go to Costco, it's even cheaper. That's a free pitch for Costco. You get 2 gallons of milk. You don't need 2 gallons of milk, but you get 2 gallons of milk for a better price. That's the Jew in me. So $2.99. Then you walk over to the Chol of Yisrael section. Except in San Diego. I don't know about LA. The San Diego section, so they get these little bottles. I don't know, what is that called? That size? It's a quart?
Yeah.
No, a half a gallon. It's a half a gallon. Those are the very tiny. This is a half a gallon.
Oh, my wife's being generous. The half a gallon. The half a gallon, and you look at the expiration date, that was 2 weeks ago. It looks, but it doesn't even look like milk. It looks like water, they put a little bit of paint inside of it. And how much do you pay for that? $6.99. There were days in San Diego, $9.99. Those people that are telling people they have to buy this milk are stealing from them. It's stealing. There's no other. What else can you say? You're stealing the money of people. I go to Bar Park and they have all the things you have in the regular stores, Twizzlers and popcorn, and all of it is the same brand of Twizzlers and whatever you buy here. They just have a new label on it. It's the same bag. They just stick a label on it because they have a special kosher supervision run that is done only by their guys with the dead foxes. And now that bag goes from being $1.50 to being $4.50 because they just put a special. They didn't do anything. They didn't touch anything. They just stood there. And maybe they didn't even stand there. Today they even put cameras there. They're not even there.
Yeah, but every mashgiach has 12, 13 kids.
Good. So you want to do tzedakah? I'll give you tzedakah, but don't steal from me. It's like Robin Hood. V'yesh manis dekakim, yeah?
It's like what they do with Coca-Cola too.
What do they do with Coca-Cola?
Pesach.
Yeah, that's the same.
They clean out with hot water, but they do it anyways once in a while.
Can I ask you a
And they
question?
just put it in the cap and
Coca-Cola,
say-
you mentioned Coca-Cola. To my dear Dr. Rosenberg from San Diego who's watching me and will kill me if I ever say a person can drink Coca-Cola. Yes, Coca-Cola is kosher for Pesach even for Ashkenazim who don't eat kidneyot. What's the problem about Coca-Cola and Pesach? The corn syrup. Many Ashkenazi authorities say that only actual corn is prohibited. By the way, hold on. Many Ashkenazi authorities don't even consider corn to be kidneyot. But when they came to America, corn also became kidneyot. And there are many Ashkenazi poskim who say that anything that is a byproduct of a kidneyot, of corn or beans, is not a problem on Pesach at all. And according to everybody, especially the Ashkenazim, how is kidneyot chametz? No, no Ashkenazi Torah scholar will tell you that kidneyot is chametz. If it's not chametz, then it's nullified not in 60, because 60 is how you nullify things that are prohibited. But things that are permitted are nullified in much less, especially Ramah says that even if the kidneyot falls into your food on Pesach, it's only nullified in a majority, a 51% mixture. And that's only if it happens on Pesach. But if it happened before Pesach, even if chametz, you intentionally nullify chametz in your food on Pesach, intentionally. Before Pesach, you're allowed to eat it on Pesach. If you intentionally cooked your chicken soup in the pot that is chametz, you're not allowed to do that on Pesach. But if you do it before Pesach, you're allowed to have that chicken soup on Pesach. There's no way in the world that a derivative of corn, which is nullified in way more than 60, not 60, I don't remember, it's nullified already in the mixture though, to the water. There's no way that can be prohibited for Ashkenazim on Pesach. This whole run of sugar, Coke, and it's all some, I don't know what it is, a money-making scheme, it's a nostalgia, but it's ignorance entirely of Jewish law.
They still follow some parts though.
Okay, Hanan, you're not the first one to jump on me for this. But he didn't jump. They sell for the same price. So maybe you're stealing from Coke. I don't know.
It's better. It's the old formula.
He said, but who suffers the most from stringency and kosher? It's the guys who went to study in yeshiva. Most of those people don't have a lot of money. You know them. They collect in your house, they collect in the synagogue. They're the people that don't have a lot of money. And what's special about the people who study in yeshiva? What's the definition of a yeshiva student? They normally don't know Jewish law. Normally what people study in yeshiva the whole day is how to make a better cup of coffee than they made yesterday. But even if they did study in yeshiva, they were studying things not Jewish law. They were studying other things, like what happens if a cow jumps over a fence on Shabbat and breaks someone's Lamborghini. They're not studying anything that has to do with practical Jewish law. So they don't even know halakha, but they know that they're supposed to be extra religious, and they are extra poor. And shenoktim klal b'chol davar, they have a rule, kol ha'machmir harei ze meshubach. Anybody who's strict is praised. V'konim ha'achalim ha'kashrut ha'machmira shebiyoker rav, they end up paying more money for food that they could have bought for cheaper, and they lose out. And so not only you're stealing from people, but you're stealing from poor people. You're stealing from people who are victims of their own lack of knowledge. It's a terrible thing. It's taking advantage of people who are disadvantaged. And so I made a list here of 10, maybe 9 or 10 things that happen when you're strict about kosher. I have a man who comes to collect to San Diego. Comes to me every once in a while. The guy doesn't always have food to feed his family. But he's part of a certain city group, and when I offer him food, he can't eat the food from my house. I'm like, I'll make food for your family, I'll send it with you, I can't eat it. Okay, comes Pesach, I want to buy you matzah for your family. Oh, I can't eat machine matzah, only the handmade matzah. Well, handmade matzah is like 10,000 times the price of a machine-made matzah. I want to give him grape juice, so I can't eat that kosher certificate. How do you want me to help you? How can you need help? And you don't have the luxury or the freedom to be so religious. And it's not even being so religious. Source 11 I told you last week. Remember? That the person who's stricter than the rabbis, essentially it could be a mitzvah that we have to kill him. But I don't want to do that again this week. Source 12. If you see a person who's stricter in Jewish law than they have to, you have to excommunicate them from the Jewish community. Chem, is your name on the list?
Yeah.
I'll find you. Okay, B'ezrat Hashem. And last but not least, I'll end the story. It's a good story. Source 15. The Talmud Yerushalmi tells a story, and I actually translated it into my book. So, but if you want my books, they're over there. If you can't afford it, you can get one anyways. Please don't worry about the price. Next week we're gonna need. Next time we're gonna need the book, or I'll send out a PDF of the chapter you need. But if you'd like to have a book, it's a good time to have it. And almost everything I said today, I translated into English in my book. So if you want these sources in English, they're here. Oh. Let me read to you in English. It's source 15, but it's in English. The donkey of Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair was stolen by robbers. Have you heard of Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair before? Something special about him. What was special about him? He was a super righteous man, and it was known that his animals were also very righteous. You know, when his animals would walk in the street, they wouldn't eat anybody else's grass. They didn't steal. They were very strict about stealing. It's a famous question. Why did Avraham Avinu have to put a muzzle around his animals, but Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair didn't have to? Why were Avraham Avinu's camels less holy than Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair's camels? Oh, okay, maybe Lot is having a negative effect over there? This was the righteousness of Abraham. Abraham knew his animals wouldn't steal, he still muzzled them. He didn't want anyone to even think that his animals steal. That's how righteous Abraham was. The donkey of Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair was stolen by robbers. It's like a carjacking of the olden days. It was hidden for 3 days, during which she ate nothing. Why? It seems like the reason she didn't eat anything was because the food was stolen, and it doesn't eat stolen food. After 3 days, they had a change of heart. They saw this donkey was about to die, so what's the point of stealing from the rabbi if you're not even going to be able to keep your investment? And returned her to the owner, saying, let us send her to her owner, lest she die here and stink up the cave. So, they're worried. A dead donkey. Once was the guy, he was a farmer. It was really cold outside, and he decided he's going to bring all his goats into his house, because it was a freezing cold night, and he didn't want to leave them in the barn. So his wife says, what are you going to do about the smell? He says, don't worry, the goats will get used to it. So when they released her, she stood at the entrance of her owner's property and began to bray. Bray is the sound of a donkey makes. He said to them, to his workers, open up for this wretched being. Go, aluva. Aluva is a wretched being. It's aluva is a miskena. In Yiddish, they would say a nebach. Go open up for her. She hasn't eaten for 3 days. Go feed my donkey. They opened up for her and she entered. He said to them, give her something to eat. They gave her barley, but she did not want to eat the barley. They said to him, Master, she does not want to eat. And he said to them, has the barley been properly tithed? Did you take off tithes from this barley? They said, yes. He said to them, have you also set aside demai? What is demai? Produce regarding which there is a doubt as to having been tithed. They replied, Rabbi, didn't you teach us that one who takes grain for an animal is exempt from tithe? I mean, animals don't have to keep this law of demai. He said to them, what should I do for this aluva? What should I do for this wretched creature who accepts upon herself many stringencies? They tied the demai and she ate. And I write a note here. Those who heard him speak warmly recall Rabbi Ovadia Yosef using this story many times in his shiurim to refer to those who were strict in deference to the actual halakha. He would say, what is the word in Hebrew to be strict? Lachmir, chuma. It says the root of that word is a chamor. You're a donkey. Somebody who decides to be strict is a donkey. I started off bashing people. I ended off bashing people. The bottom line is not to tell you that it's not important to be careful in observing Jewish law. But that when you are careful in Jewish law, what does it mean to be careful about Jewish law? To actually follow what it says in Jewish law. But to do more than what it says in Jewish law has many negative ramifications. It hurts you. You enter a state of spiritual paralysis. You enter into a state of self-loathing. Imagine you never think you're going to be perfect. It's never enough. I'm never going to be able to finish. I'm never going to be able to be done. You enter into a place where other people become repulsed by you and your Judaism, and you cause other people to not want to be observant, to not have anything to do with the Jewish community. The last but not least is you make a chamo out of yourself. You turn yourself into a donkey, like a Bahadri donkey. And Bezat Hashem, my hope and my prayer is that the more we learn together, we'll realize nobody here is sitting at this table trying to look for leniencies. That's not the answer. Following Jewish law as it is written in Jewish law is not a leniency, even if the whole world will tell you that. Following Jewish law is the greatest thing that you can do. Not following Jewish law, even to be strict, that is the greatest leniency. That's the greatest damage to Jewish law that could ever be done. And I'm almost unsure if we'll ever be able to turn back the tide in a massive way. But I can guarantee you that in our own homes, in our own lives, in our own communities, studying Jewish law properly and well enough is what's going to allow us the freedom to be able to follow a normal, sane, balanced Judaism. B'ezrat Hashem, that's what I look forward to doing. The next two classes, B'ezrat Hashem, are going to be in the topics of Jewish law. And right after that, we're going to start individual topics, not general ideas, but actual topics of Jewish law. And what we need to cover in the next weeks are the authority of different rabbis. You know, we say like, my rabbi this, my rabbi that. Your rabbi and the Rambam are not the same thing. They both call rabbi, yes, but one can't trump the other one. There's a big argument between, my rabbi of Young Israel and Maimonides. It's not an argument. It's not a thing. It's not your rabbi can't argue with Maimonides. It doesn't happen that way. And we have to, in order to do that, we must understand what?
Many do.
Many do. We also we have to know who is allowed to make rules for the Jewish community? Who has authority? Why is there a difference between Sfaradim and Ashkenazim? As we study Jewish law, I'm going to teach both opinions. Sfaradim do this, Ashkenazim do that. How could we all have stood at the same Mount Sinai and walked away two different Bibles? We need to understand that, because before we deal with actual instances of Jewish law, if we teach Jewish law and say, well, some do this and some do that, you're going to say, hey, this whole Torah can't be real, because if we all stood at Mount Sinai, why are these guys doing something because they came from Russia, and those guys doing something different because they came from Iraq? It can't be that way. And so to do that, we have to properly understand who are the Chachamim, what are the codes that we're studying, what are the books. I mentioned many books here, the Talmud, the Midrash, the Mishnah, the Shulchan Aruch, the Rambam. Who are these? I'm going to assign homework in the Google Classroom. I really ask, thank you to everybody who printed. I see almost everybody was involved in the Google Classroom. I'm going to put out an article that we should read until next week, and then another one for the following, and B'ezrat Hashem after that, we're going to dive headfirst into the pool of halakha. The next date we'll be sent together is 2 Wednesdays from today. That comes out to be February 13th, is that correct? And then I believe February 27th. I think so, but I'm going to send out an exact address. Shava, thank you so much for being here. I'm here to talk, to answer any questions. If you want to ask a question, now is a good time. Anyone who needs to go, not at all.
You mentioned earlier, for example, cutting your nails before going to the mikveh, which you said was not required by halakha, but it was the proper thing to do. So where do you draw the distinction between something like that, where obviously if a Rav came and told you, yes, you're chayav, and this is absolutely a requirement, that's where I see it being a problem. Or when it comes to harm the person doing it or someone else, correct. But otherwise, I mean, as you said, it's the proper thing to do even though it's not required. So where's the distinction?
That's a great question. And this has a lot to do with what we're studying next time, which is how do these things even happen then? The Torah says one thing and then we have another thing. You are able to go to the mikveh with nails as long as they're in a certain condition of cleanliness and a certain quality, and that they're cleaned properly underneath, and different things create chatitzot, create barriers in different ways. The minhag is not minhag that was born 50 years ago or hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. That's codified in many codes of Jewish law. Because when I say it's not halakha, meaning it's not required on a biblical level, even not on a Talmudic level, but the Chachamim who came after the Talmud did ask of that, and it's in general something which the rabbis looked at as Benot Yisrael, that the Jewish women took upon themselves to do this. And so I can't force a person to say, hey, you can't go to the mikveh unless you cut your nails. You can't do that. You can't go to the mikveh unless you take off your nail polish. That's not a halakha. I can't compel someone to do that way. But Jewish women have essentially taken this upon themselves, not yesterday, it's not 50 years, it's not 100 years, it's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And that actually might be an interesting class in general for a conversation, but like what is actually required. I plan in our series of classes, kashrut is only one of those topics. There are many other topics in Jewish law that are equally interesting and have been changed by the people around us. And so I guess what I'm telling you is there's a difference between a custom that started, this is Minhag Los Angeles, and this is a custom recorded by the Shulchan Aruch. And those are two different weights of customs, and even if it's said that way in Shulchan Aruch, I'm still being honest and telling you, it's not a law, because I must. When I teach the halakha, I must study. It's not a law. By the way, in the terms of family purity in general, it's an area that must be studied again, because I know how most people studied it. With some teacher who taught them all kinds of crazy, not even a good enough word, like crazy. And these things, they're actually halachot in this regard. And Sephardic rabbis in general, the stereotype about Chachmei Sfarad is that they were very strict in anything that had to do with mitzvot between you and another person. Mitzvot between us and Hashem, we were excessively lenient about these things. I'm proud of it. I'm not afraid to tell you that. The laws of tzniut, for example, we view that as a person who's, I'm not talking tzniut like wear your sleeve clothes. I'm not here. Tzniut is like, I'm going to a wedding and dancing with somebody else's husband. That kind of thing is potentially damaging to your relationship. It's
turn off.
This is Al-Khanan, by the way. He's the one who talks like me.
Turn off again.
It's a potentially damaging situation to your spouse and to their spouse. But in terms of the laws of family purity, for example, if you're too strict on the laws of family purity, you end up hurting the relationship between you and your spouse. And therefore, we view the strictures and the laws of family purity, the stringencies there, to be damaging to a relationship between two people, and actually we choose to be lenient in those regards. But I'm not telling you in everything. There are rules and there are regulations, and that's an important area of halakha to discuss, as much as it may not be so comfortable to discuss, and we'll have to think about how and when we do such a thing like that. Anything else?
I have a question about source 2.
Yes.
And I think we kind of will agree on that. He mentioned here that when a posek make a psak, he doesn't make it necessarily only based on the Shulchan Aruch, but on istaklut nechona b'chaim.
Proper outlook on life. Yes.
Point of view about life. How do you understand this? What is istaklut nechona? Because this is an individual, it's subjective thing.
It's very subjective.
That's a problematic statement here, because one person's, in a way, philosophy about life or point of view is different than the other.
So I had a question like this similar that happened. I had a student who was in Israel, and he was joining the Israeli army. He was joining the Israeli army, and he needed to know which rabbi could he ask all his halakha questions to. And I told him, when you're going to choose a rabbi to ask your halakha questions to, the rabbi that you choose must be one who sees it as a value that you're serving the Israeli army. Because if you're going to ask questions to a rabbi who thinks that being in the Israeli army is an incorrect thing, the way he's going to rule for you in your situation is going to be terribly flawed. And this absolutely is subjective. I always thought, how could you rule something? Someone calls you up on the phone. Hey, I have this problem on the internet with our forum. People ask me a question. I don't know who you are. I don't know who your husband is. I don't know who your wife is. I don't know who your parents are. I don't know where you live. I don't know how hard it is for you to find kosher food. I don't know what your shlom bayit is. I don't know anything about you. And for me to give some objective ruling without properly understanding you is very dangerous. And I'm aware of that shortcoming. And oftentimes I'll tell a person, I'm vague. I'm vague in an answer precisely because I don't know you well enough to be able to help you properly. When someone comes to me and somebody that I know, it's a family that I've been with, I did their wedding, I was by their kids' bar mitzvah, I understand where they're at, I understand where the family's at, and I hope that when I rule for them something, that I understand what this family is able to handle and not. Also, there are rabbis who are brilliant in Jewish law, but they're absolute lunatics. I can't tell you that any other way. There are people who know a lot of Torah, but ask them a question about something humanity related, and you'll run for the hills.
But how do you understand that he basically is saying that when somebody come to rule halacha, he should look about, istaklut nechona. It's a matter of really what the halacha is. He need to do it according to the halacha, not according to his point of view.
No, there's a philosophy that comes with halacha. Like Hillel and Shammai, different halachot became because different philosophies. They have different outlooks on life. So that is going to taint your halachic outcome.
Well, let me give you. He didn't make this up, even though he repackaged it. But this idea is found in the Talmud. Let's say you have a rabbi who also happens to abuse his wife, God forbid. I'm not saying this as a real story. But he is the most brilliant Torah scholar you've met in your whole life. Can you ask this rabbi questions in Jewish law?
No.
Why not? But he knows everything. The Talmud says, Im en harav domeh lemalach Adonai Tzevaot. If the rabbi is not similar to an angel of Hashem, it's al tevakshut people. Don't ask someone why, because who you are taints the halakha that you have in a positive way and in a negative way. And we would love to say there's objective Jewish law. And really, yeah, obviously, like, you have to keep Shabbat. Yes, that's an objective Jewish law. How you keep Shabbat, though? Different rabbis had different perspectives on this, and we would be lying to ourselves if we believe that there is an absolute objective halakha. Absolutely, there are objective halakhot. But the way in which these halakhot are approached or looked at very much depends on who is approaching them and who is looking at them. You see this with prophecy.
Yeah.
Someone who's a prophet,
Yirmiyahu.
you have a dream, correct? You want your dream to be interpreted. Back in the days, you see there were who? Yirmiyahu and Chuda. You remember this? Chuda is a prophetess, and Yirmiyahu was alive in her generation. And there was a dream, and they chose to go not to Yirmiyahu, Jeremiah the prophet. They chose to go to Chuda. Why? Because the way that she would interpret the dream would bring the dream into effect. That she was a kinder, gentler, softer person, and her chesed, her kindness, would make that dream better, even if it's the same dream. And in halakha, there's a similar one. I don't want to hold any back. I'm going to wish you a lot of talk. If you want to speak to me, I'm here. You can still come over and ask questions. Thank you so much for coming.